A few button mashes later, and the drone had a little overhead LED light that turned on. It was just enough for Rico to see. There'd been another button that was an emergency return home button, but Rico worried it would outrun him and he would be completely lost forever trying to roam in the labyrinth until the flies got him. So he used the LED from the drone to march back by memory. It got darker and darker as the light from the drone got dimmer and dimmer, and Rico started holding the wall as he went, trying to think if he should follow the right wall back or if the left wall would be quicker. He shrugged either way. He feared he'd be lost for days, so he just headed forward. Eventually he saw a faint light in the pitch black, and the temperatures felt a tiny bit warmer. A few more rooms, and he knew his bedroom would be right around the corner, and there it was. Chapter 20, Earnings. The warm room welcomed him. The stone was warm, the air was warm. Everything was warm. Rico got another piece of coal from his stash and threw it in the fireplace. According to the instructions, his pot would almost be done baking. He watched it turn a few times, and there was no visible cracks. It was turning out pretty much perfectly, but then he remembered and frowned. He hadn't found any seeds, and had his dirt and pot, but no seeds. Rico frowned again and took all of his electronics back to the battery pack and started plugging everything in. Within a few moments, the drone, cell phone, and flashlights were all charging. He checked his pockets before he sat down to make sure he wasn't going to sit on anything, and thankfully remembered his shovel. That would have hurt, Rico chuckled to himself, and then remembered his other pocket. An old bag he'd found that the skeleton had been trying to protect. Carefully, Rico tried to parse through the bag in the glow of the firelight. It was closed shut by a strong drawstring, and upon loosening, Rico could feel 3 distinct marble-sized shapes in the bag. Gently, he opened the bag and rolled the 3 round shapes onto the floor, almost looking more like grapes than anything. Upon close inspection, the first seemed rotten, and the second was cracked and dry. But the third... The thought trailed off in Rico's mind as his mouth woke up and began intense pain. He quickly fumbled through his medical supplies and took one of his new gen pain pills and his oral medical supplies. Quickly he took the bottle of clove oil and dabbed drops onto a piece of gauze. He counted 1, 2, 3, and then stopped thinking. 4, 5, then carefully rolled it into a burrito and shoved it in his mouth, where it hurt. It burned, then smelled sweet, and then burned more, like acid. "Too much!" Rico exclaimed with a mouthful of burning gauze. 3, it was supposed to be 3. Ack, ack, ack. Rico dug for his water and started swishing it around, the water adding to his pain and burning. Careful not to swallow any, he carefully pursed the mixed liquid contents onto his shirt sleeve. About 8 times, and the burning thankfully stopped along with some of the pain. Not as much as if he'd got the correct dose, but on the flip side, at least he wasn't going to instantly drop dead from liver failure tonight. Or so he hoped. His left eyelid twitched. He shrugged it off. Probably nothing. Where was he? What was he doing? Rico looked around as the pain subsided. In his hand was a black and gold seed. It almost reminded him of a dandelion or something, but hard and rolled into a ball. He put it into the back for safekeeping and tossed the other 2, clearly gone, into the fireplace for their final rest. Then he remembered the one he'd found under the skeleton. It had in the dirt. He remembered the dirt ball he'd found under the skeleton. It had an intact root ball, he remembered. Maybe it had still been in the dirt until he disturbed it. It didn't seem dead or rotted. Rico recalled that plants could go into hibernation, but he'd never heard for how long. Probably only over a winter or something at most. It was probably dead, but he would treat it with respect anyway. That skeleton person did die to protect it after all. So Rico opened his bag, and there it was. It looked dead, but it didn't look dead. It wasn't crunchy and crumbly, but it wasn't soggy either. At the end of the root ball, there appeared to be some longer roots that almost looked like tentacles. Rico held it in his hands delicately and turned it over a few times. It seemed all there, not damaged at all. Maybe bruised a little bit, but a little bruising didn't kill a plant if it was hibernating. Rico regretted not bringing some of its dirt with him, but he knew he hadn't really had time. He set the little plant back in the dirt and covered its root ball back up and got his leather gloves to take off the pot from being overbaked. Rico carefully set the pot down, half worrying it would somehow hit the floor and explode on impact, but it didn't. The pot was very strong. He swiped through his phone's pictures of the wall instructions a few times and didn't see anything specific. He made sure his phone was plugged in, and then he looked through the wall instructions a few times and didn't see anything specific on when to put the dirt in. Rico thought about it for a second and figured it was okay to start putting the dirt in, so he did. But then remembered he needed some gravel or something first. Rico peered out of the darkness with no flashlights left, and his phone tethered to the charger getting charged. No way he was going to get gravel tonight, but what about the coal? He thought about it for a second. No reason the coal wouldn't work. He gathered up the tiny pieces of coal and started putting them in. A little extra alkaline won't hurt you guys, right? Rico asked the plant. Out of the corner of his eye, the plant may have moved a sliver. Rico wasn't sure. Could have been his eyes playing tricks on him. It'd been a long day after all. Could have been the shadows dancing from the fireplace also. Then he had thought, alkaline was what he'd put in his wound to get it better. Maybe this was all linked. Who knows? So he put some tiny bits and shards of coal on the bottom of the pot, so the plant could breathe through the holes on the bottom that he made. Then he started sifting in the dirt, trying to make some bits airy and some other parts compact. Rico had done this before, but always had varying levels of success, so he tried both methods to try to hedge his bets. With the pot about 2/3 full of dirt, he rested the plant on a hunch. It had some kind of a big bud thing on the end, and Rico had a really weird feeling about this. Sizing up the root ball, he dug a little hole about an inch or so down, which is what the instructions showed. That also lined up with what he'd seen at the last stand. It was resting about an inch into the dirt. Then Rico set the root ball in the dirt and packed it in. The plant seemed to want to stand up on its own weight, but the bud on top seemed to want to hang down a little bit. Not having any sticks or anything to prop it up with, Rico got his antenna, which was being useless right now anyway, and stuck it in the dirt. It had some coils and notches that were perfect for resting the plant's top on, and it rested on the antenna like it was propping itself up. A thought smacked Rico, and he realized the plant would want some water. He reached for a sealed water bottle that he hadn't opened yet, then on a whim, he used the half bottle of well water instead. You probably want some of your own water, don't you? The light from the stove danced on the plant, giving it a sense of motion it didn't have. Not really getting a response, Rico poured half the remaining water on the root ball, then the rest around the ball in a circle to promote the root's expansion. Rico, getting a bit more tired, had an even weirder idea. The plant seemed to be doing well so far. What if he took this a step further? He remembered one of the cave paintings that showed them sacrificing one of the flies to the plant to sort of wake it up or activate it or something. Well, Rico wasn't getting anywhere near those flies without being ready for war, but what he did have was gooey fly guts all over the drone. So Rico got out a stick and smeared killer fly guts all over the stick and brought it over to the plant. Rico looked close at the bud, and it appeared to have lips, similar to how the picture had shown, so he took the bug guts on the stick and rubbed it on the plant's lips. The guts and goo dripped down into the plant's mouth, and it seemed to let out a sigh. It was a tiny sigh, like a baby's sigh. Rico was shocked. Had he just killed it? Was that its final life expiring in front of Rico? He was so upset. Had this all just been for nothing? The plant didn't immediately keel over, but it was being propped up after all. Unsure what to do, Rico resolved to leaving it alone. Last thing he wanted to do was to make the poor plant somehow even worse. He faintly recalled a friend that used to continually make things worse in vain attempts to make them better. Sometimes less is more. You can add, but you can't always take back. It was a weird memory, but Rico remembered this guy overkilling and overthinking everything. He'd try his best and nearly always fail, When he got it right, though, it was basically accomplishing the otherwise unachievable.